Good afternoon, QA engineers, QA automation engineers, SDETs, and those who are planning to become one soon. You guys have asked us to record an interview preparation video for Playwright for technical interview questions. And here we go, as always, delivering you what you've been requesting for a while. And it's going to be a panel discussion with two of our graduates from the Codemify QA Bootcamp, where they will answer my questions about a Playwright, JavaScript, best test automation practices, and I believe CI/CD as well. Either way, we're going to discuss them after the answer in a panel. So we're gonna go around and share our ideas. What would be the best way to answer this question from each of our perspective. But I'm going to share this video only with those kind of people who will hit the big fat thumb up button below, subscribe to our channel, and also join our Instagram and Telegram communities, links to which you can find right here. Now, let me quickly introduce myself and we're gonna get started. My name is Sergey Kromchenko. I'm a software QA engineer, lead manager, and a senior engineering manager of SDET in the past. But these days, I'm helping people like you become a QA engineer, QA automation engineer, and SDET from scratch, or to improve your existing skills. And I've been doing it for the last 7 years already. Anyways, thank you for joining. Make sure to hit that big fat thumb up button below and let's get started. Welcome on board, everybody. Thank you for joining this, not a webinar, but this interview preparation technical session for the Playwright enthusiasts and professionals. And I would love to introduce you guys to, well, let's introduce Lucas first, our superstar who's been on quite a few YouTube videos already. And he's probably like a third or fourth one, right?
Yeah, I think thanks Sergio for inviting us for this call. I think it's my third time here. It's always a pleasure to help. I hope I can contribute a little bit for this interview and to help the guys who are starting or who are trying to get into the IT world. So my name is Lucas. I'm from Brazil. I've been a student of Codemify. I don't remember how many years ago. I think 4 or 5, maybe 5 years ago, something like that. And right now I work as an SDET for an American company, thanks to Codemify. Before that, I was a civil engineer, and Codemify helped me to get into IT and then completely change my life and be able to work from here to US so I can work remote and also travel the world a little bit like Serge is doing now in Poland. I also like to travel to Europe very often. So sometimes I go stay 1, 2, 3 months there working, which is amazing. And it's been a great life since I joined the QA world, and I advise everybody to also do that if they can.
Absolutely. Thank you for the intro, Lucas. I appreciate it. And Mr. Abdullah Rahimi himself, please tell us, who are you?
Thank you very much, Sergi, for having me. It's a pleasure being here. My name is Abdullah Rahimi. I'm originally from Afghanistan. As Lucas mentioned, I had a dream to become a QA engineer in this IT field. And thanks to Codemify for helping me out to do that, to achieve this dream. And right now I'm working remotely, and that's another dream that I had. Thanks to Codemify, it's a great thing that I did choose to go with this bootcamp, and it's a pleasure to being here. Thank you.
Let's rock it. Thank you, Mr. Abdullah. All right. Now, after we have shortly introduced ourselves, let's jump directly into questions. And we're going to start with JS-related fundamentals, then Playwright basics. We're going to jump into test automation best practices, and then we're going to end it up with the CI/CD and broader testing concepts. So first of all, my very favorite and the most popular probably question in the world of JavaScript. What is, and by the way, during this interview, I will throw in questions and anyone can pick them up. If you want to answer, you answer. If you don't want, you don't want. If no one picks the question, I'll probably pick it up, answer it myself. And it's going to be a panel discussion where each of us can answer and contribute to the general answer, so we would all come up with the best idea possible, as we're all professionals.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, so the very first one and the favorite one. Explain the difference between var, lat, and const in JS, and which one do you use in your scripts and why?
That's a good one.
It is an easy one, and I do want to pick the easy ones, so that's why I'm here. Basically, the difference between wallet and constant JavaScript is they have their own way of representing values and assigning values, while var is a global scoped and it's basically possible to reassign and redeclare this var. But on the other hand, we have let, which is reassignable, but we cannot redeclare it, and it's a blocked scope. And also we do have const, which is not possible to reassign and redeclare it. And in most of the cases, in my project, I will always use let, because most of the time I do have to reassign the values. So that's why I will go with let. But the second favorite will be the const. And the most common practice is to always avoid var.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I usually start with the const. If I cannot use const, I use let. If I cannot use let, probably I'm crazy because I gotta use var. There's no way in the world you would use it.
Yeah. So it's good to mention that var is not advisable to use nowadays in modern JavaScript. Yeah, usually you're gonna be use const or let. Yeah, it's the answer from Abdullah is the same as mine. The only difference is that in my project we use more const than let. But it's the same thing. I always try to go with const, and if I cannot, I go with let. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember one of the students have joined us. She was working for some company in the US and she said her developers are always using var. And when she was using const and let, they asked her why she was using it. I was like, are you kind of from a different reality or something? That doesn't sound like is right. I mean, it sounds completely wrong in my opinion, and I don't know why would people use var, especially developers, especially in the code base, not even the scripting, not even in scripting such as UI or API automation, but in actual app development.
Yeah.
I've almost lost my mind after I've heard that. Alrighty, let's continue. Second one, how do you handle asynchronous operations in JavaScript? And can you give an example with Async-Await?
Yeah, I can take that. So basically, in JavaScript, asynchronous operations, for example, like HTTP requests, they are handled with promises. So the async-await is the best way to handle promises. So the async will make a function return a promise, and the await will basically fulfill that promise as soon as the action is fulfilled. So for example, in a test, if a test is an async function, all the steps within that test will be awaited so that they are executed like they were synchronous, that they are executed in order, so the test is not flaky. So everything that needs to be executed is executed first of the other ones. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lucas. And let's go to the next one. How do you structure code across multiple files in a Node.js project?
I want to take that one. Basically, to create reusable project and more manageable project, it's always the best practice to create it in a way that could be much easier to manage it and basically easy to understand that project as well. So in my project, in my current project, we are using page object model, basically extracting everything based on the structure of page object model. We have fixture files, which is source all the data, and we do have the page object folder, which we always include all the locators and all the methods that we do have for those page. And we do have test file, which we import everything from the page object model and fixture file, and we reuse it. And if we have common methods, then it's always going to the config file that could be usable throughout the project.
Makes sense. Fair enough.
Yeah, I was in doubt. Are you asking specifically about the tests, the test part of the project, or also the whole application project? Because yeah, that was.
Let's say both.
Yeah. No, because if you have it, probably that's not a very common question for QAs, because that's more like on developer side. But also the Node.js projects, usually they have the same structure. Like you always have an index or app.js, for example, which is the entrance, the main entry point of the application. Then you have the routes folder, which handle all the routes of the route handlers. You have the models, which are basically for database manipulation. Controllers file, which handles all the API endpoints, and also utilities for all the utilities which are reused, commonly reused across the project. What else? The config file, and also for at the end the tests, the test file for where all the tests are located.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that part is definitely for developers. And generally speaking, any testing application is still Node.js application, so the idea is the same, but just a different structure. Absolutely. Thank you, Lucas. Let's move on to the next one. So now we're going to switch to Playwright basics. And the very first question that you guys will pretty much always get as an QA automation engineer or as an SDET is walk me through step by step into the test automation framework setup from scratch. Like you're joining the company and you're setting up test automation framework for the first time. How do you do that?
Basically, for creating a project from scratch, it's really important to know the project itself, gather information, and based on that, start creating whatever tools that you will use and install those tools. Basically, I will go with VS Code, and if it's Playwright or Cypress, we'll create the directory for that. We'll set up my GitHub account. And after that, initialize and installing the Playwright node.js, the first thing. And secondly, we'll go with installing Playwright and creating the directories that I do need, and basically starting with the test files that I do need, and after that creating fixture file folder, and after that page object model, and separating everything based on that concept, based on the page object model concept. And after doing that, creating the test cases, I will start creating the test cases based on the recreation suite that I do. We do have a manual part. And after doing that, we'll basically push the code to the GitHub and set up our CI/CD.
Awesome. So you first push it and then set up CI/CD. That makes sense. Hey guys, quick reminder. If you did forget to hit that like button, I want you to do that. And I want you to leave a comment right below this video, as this will help my YouTube channel to grow. As I'm delivering a lot of free content for you, I hope you're thankful to me as I'm thankful to you for watching this video. Let's continue. Awesome. Anything you want to add, Lucas, or does it sound all great?
No, that's great. Yeah, usually for starting the Playwright project, you just follow the documentation on the Playwright website, which will have all the steps that you need. For example, the commands you need to run, like npx Playwright, you need Playwright at latest or something like that, which is going to start the install Playwright. So you're going to have the basic dependencies, the base, like the test, example test files and everything. So you can start from there. And also the Playwright config file, which is the base configuration of the whole project. And it will include things such as the base URL, or where all the tests will run against or start against that. You can have defined timeouts defined there, the size of the viewport, the retries, what else? Like the definition of projects, like if you're going to run against Chromium, WebKit, Firefox, or only one of them. So you can define basically the whole base structure of your project inside the config file. So all your tests will run using that base configuration.
Absolutely. Makes sense.
I do want to add one thing regarding installing the Playwright. There is a plugin for VS Code as well, which is a quite handy tool. And basically, with installing that, you could install Playwright in any project that you want to create a new directory on your project. And you could run just single test. You can run all of them. Basically, that plugin is something that everyone should have if they are using Playwright. Basically, it's a substitute of using the terminal instead of using the terminal.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Fancy.
Pretty handy. That's cool. Great. And by the way, guys, if any one of you watching this video anywhere in the world interested in learning automation and you would like to get some information or even ask me, you can simply click a link right below this video and schedule one-on-one to learn more about how you can become a key automation engineer, or how can we help you to change your career. All right, we're done with advertisement. Let's move on. And the next one, locating elements. Which Playwright locators do you prefer? CSS, text, role, etc. And why?
Well, I'll respond in my case. We always prefer to go with CSS, especially because we have a best practice in our company where the developers usually add specific, we call data QAD selectors for each element on the page. So we have those unique selectors always well defined, and then we can use them to make the test more stable. If we don't have a data QAD specific selector, you can either add one if you learn a little bit about HTML. It's not difficult to do. But also, if you don't want to just create a PR to do that, you can use the Playwright built-in get by role, get by text, get by something, which is also usually pretty stable as well.
Yeah, as Lucas mentioned, but in our case, we do have IDs for each element, and we always go to use that basically. And if not, as Lucas mentioned, most of the time we are asking the development team to add those. And it's the best way to learn HTML, but I haven't done that so far. So yeah.
Makes sense, but ask someone to do the job for you. Agreed. Alrighty, next one. Explain the relationship between the browser, a browser context, and a page in Playwright. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Sometimes this generates a lot of confusion. You wanna answer that, Abdullah?
All yours, Lucas.
No, okay. Yeah, basically the browser is the actual browser instance. Yeah, so it's a Chromium browser, it's a WebKit browser, it's a Firefox browser, and the context is like a user, let's say a user profile or a session within that browser. So within one browser, you can have many different user contexts, different contexts, and a page is like a tab open inside that context. So you can have multiple pages open inside each context. So you can have different contexts with different pages running in parallel, for example.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And that covers browser context and a page, right?
Yep.
Coolio. I think I forgot to remind people to hit the like button right below this video, to subscribe to our channel, and join our Telegram and Instagram communities, links to which you can find right below this video. Let's continue. All right, next one. What are the test.describe, test.beforeEach, etc. used for?
Basically, to answer this question, whenever we have a project for Playwright, when we want to start a test, creating a test, we have to start it with test.describe. And that's the way that the Playwright will know that it's a test and will grab it and will run it on the browser. And after that test before each, the hooks that you're talking about, we have before each, after each, before all, and after all hooks. Which are quite handy when we want to run something at the start of each test case, each time each test case is run, or after each test case, and at the end of all the test case that we want to run that particular functionality or the test case.
Sure. Can you please give people an example of something that you could put into before each?
Yes, in my project, when we want to log in, we want to use login, then we will put it in before each. While running all the test cases, it will be run one time, and it will be used throughout all the test cases, but we do need the authorization for.
Sure, that's a good one. Thank
Yeah,
you, Abdullah.
you can also use the before each also to create the necessary data, for example, that you need to use for that test. So we always try to make the test as more deterministic as we can. Let's say we need to create like a specific form to interact with in the test. So we can create that through the API or something like that in the before each, and then use that in the test and use the after each block to clear that test data for the next runs to be clean as well.
Nice. So pretty much in the before each there can be a test setup, and in after each there can be test teardown.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Alrighty, automatic waiting. How does Playwright handle waiting for elements to be ready? When might you need to manually wait to verify timeouts?
I don't know, Abdullah, if you started directly with Playwright or you started with some other framework before?
No, actually, I did a start. I do have Selenium background as well, but mostly Cypress.
Yeah.
This
I'll
question,
help you with
yes.
I was
Yeah,
happy
yeah,
to start with Playwright because we started at my company first with WebDriver.io, and then we had to do that all on our own. So wait for the elements to be ready before clicking on them or stuff, because otherwise the test will be totally flaky. So Playwright do that for us, which is amazing. So Playwright has automatic waiting for elements to be ready, to be clickable, to be visible. So we basically don't need to do anything. When you do page click on something, then Playwright will do all that on the background for you.
Yep, that's one of the best parts, that you honestly don't have to worry about waits. It simply waits automatically. And in Selenium and majority of other frameworks, you would have to take care of that beforehand.
yeah.
Don't know if you want to add
And
anything.
about Cypress and Playwright, this is one of the best things that we do have automation and automating waiting for the elements, and we don't have to be worried about that. And that's one of the best features that they do have against any other tools out there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question. Authentication and storage state. That's like a mid plus level question. What's your approach to storing and reusing login state across multiple tests in Playwright? That's a good one.
Yeah, I can start by that. So basically, there are some scenarios where you want to reuse a login state, or you want to store or define a login state for your tests. In my case, we use fixtures for that. So in my company, we have a very specific set of permissions and things that a user needs to have to be able to do certain actions. So for example, the user needs to have a certain role, to be in a certain team, and to have certain permissions. So we created fixtures for each specific user. So that fixture will create a user in the role which is needed, add the user to the team, create a browser context for the user, and create a page for that user. So all I have to do is to import that user fixture to my test, and it will execute the whole test as that user. So for example, I can have for each an array with different fixtures for different users, and have the test to loop through that array of users and execute the same test for each user fixture. So that will be a good way to handle this kind of authentication.
Absolutely, that's the great way, and that's not the easiest. I mean, that's not the easiest way. I'm pretty sure a lot of the junior people with not much background in Playwright will be like, "What did he say just now? Let me replay it one more time and listen to it." By the way, if you guys didn't catch that, please leave a comment below and let us know. We might dig into this question more deeply in one of the next interviews. But for now, you can replay it. Moving forward, command line usage. What are the common Playwright CLI commands or command line interface commands you might use?
The most common line that we do use with Playwright is just running the test cases, npx Playwright to run, and the test that we want to run, the name of the test and the folder specification. And after that, I would say that sometimes I do use the debugging as well. Basically, npx Playwright debug. And also there are npx Playwright, which is another good feature about the Playwright, which makes the user able to just go collect each element on the web page, and it will create all the codes for you. That's another good feature about Playwright that Cypress doesn't have that. And also the Playwright in installation, npx Playwright in install, if you do want to create a project from scratch.
Yeah, I want to add something to that. The CodeGen one, I think it's great for at least junior people who are starting and maybe don't have much knowledge about Playwright, because probably don't know all the syntaxes and how to use everything. So if you just use npx Playwright CodeGen, it will open the browser for you, and then you just go to the instance and click the elements you want, and you see on your side the tasks being created automatically for you, which yeah. And also, I want to chat for the npx Playwright test, which we're going to use to run our tests, that you can add different things to this command depending on what you want to do. For example, if you want to just run the test, and in the config file, you define that the base mode is going to be running the test headless. So you have to add npx Playwright test -- headed. So it run in headed mode, and you can see the test. You can also run with -- grep, and then add a tag to run a specific test by a tag. So for example, in my test name, I always add the test case number with an @ so I can do npx playwright test -- grep and the tag, which is the test case number, and then it will run only that test from that file. And another one which is really useful is to use repeat each. So it's -- repeat -each equals to the number of times you want to repeat the test. So basically, if you want to do the test multiple times to verify if it's not flaky or something like that, you can use it for this case.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
One thing about the documentation of Playwright, even in the terminal, is that while choosing any of these lines that Lucas mentioned, you could just add at the end of that -- then it will give you all the list that what you can do and what a line and how you could use it. Even if you have any question regarding the lines that you could use with CodeGen, you could just mention that npx playwright CodeGen space -- help, then it will give you all the list which is related to CodeGen. So that's really another helpful way to use help line as well.
Yeah, that's a
That's a good one. Yeah. And how often do you guys use CodeGen, if you generally use it?
I don't use that much. I used at the beginning a little bit, but not more than that.
Like for kids, right?
Yeah, I used it like a few months at the beginning, and then I stopped. I never use it anymore.
As Lucas mentioned, when you're starting to see how it's doing everything for you, it's something that it will attract you. But at the end, when you want to implement page object model or any other design pattern, then it's not a best practice to go with CodeGen.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. That's an answer to the question: is AI taking over our jobs yet? Doesn't look like. Alrighty, moving forward to the next one. So, test automation best practices. How do you ensure your test suite remains maintainable? Do you use any design patterns?
Yeah, Abdullah mentioned that he uses page object model, right, Abdullah? In our company, we use a slightly different configuration of page object. So we started with that 2 years ago. And it's been great so far. So basically, we don't define the classes and everything inside the specific class that we only gonna use there. So we have inside the project, we have a folder only for selectors. So all the selectors are there. We have a folder inside fixtures for all the global URLs, all the URLs we have to use in the tests. We have a folder only for UI helpers, only for API helpers, another folder for tests. So we basically just import everything to the test as we need. So selectors, helpers, and yeah, basically we structure that way.
Interesting. Interesting. Not a standard way, but if it works better, then it works better. Do you get what format do you use? What type of data is it? Is it a class or is it just a JS file with a bunch of const that you import export separately, each of them when you need it?
It's just a file with the exported functions, for example, for helpers. Yeah, so we just use export const function, async, whatever, and then declare that function. Then we can import that to the test itself.
Yeah. So guys, you guys are not using classes, right?
No.
Awesome. Yeah, you do it separately because whenever you export entire class, you're exporting an entire thing that you might not even use. So it's just an extra usage of memory in a large scale.
Exactly.
Got it. That's a cool one. All right. How do you handle test data creation and teardown? I think we've partially answered it, but let's go through it. Have you used fixtures in your tests to manage data? So test setup, test teardown, and fixtures.
That's all yours, Lucas. I'm ready to learn.
Yeah, no, we use as I mentioned. So we basically use the test, the before each or before all, whatever, to define the necessary test data or the state that we need for the test to be executed. So creating things or preparing all the like setting permissions. For example, there are sometimes I need a specific permission to be set only in the test for that specific user. So I will use a function to set that permission through the API. And this is one thing which is important to call out, that usually when you are preparing the test data for your test to be executed and the tear down where you are deleting the data, that's good to do all those steps through the API if you can, because that speeds your test. And then you can do only the UI part, which is the test itself, through the UI. Yeah. So basically test before each before all to create the necessary data or set up the test state. Tear down at the end with the after each or after all to delete all the data created during the test. And we use fixtures in a bunch of different ways. As I mentioned before, with the user fixtures to define specific cases of which user I'm gonna run the test against. Also, we have fixtures that define certain permissions that are like general across different roles for those users. We have fixtures for URLs, so we just import a fixture containing a certain URL that I want to run against. So yeah, I think that's more or less. Also flags, if the test needs to enable a certain feature flag, we can also define that inside fixtures and import it to the test.
Nice. That makes sense. The next one, oh, that's one of my favorite ones. Flaky test. What causes flakiness and how do you reduce or eliminate it in your test automation strategy?
Everybody loves it.
I want to think that the causes of flakiness is basically sometimes it's timing dependencies. So it's timing dependencies that some elements need to be loaded and we should wait for that element. And basically, Playwright has the automating waiting for that. But if not, we should create to handle that. Manual waits to handle that, and we have UI changes, and sometimes in user interface there are some actions to be taken to from user side to show that element visible. And that's another thing that causes the flakiness of the test cases. And sometimes it's also the shared state that the same data is used by another functionalities as well. So basically, overall, to take care of the flakiness, you have to do the root cause analysis and find the real issue. And after finding that, create your own ways to reduce or resolve that issue. And in Playwright, sometimes some test cases could be resolved and could be found by putting retries. And Playwright does help with that as well. And most of the time when you don't have anything to resolve that issue, then you do have the development team to communicate with and resolve that issue for you. And if it's not important, then my suggestion will be to just move it to unisolated and bring it back when you have time to solve it.
Yeah, agreed with that. And honestly, there could be so many different reasons for the flakiness. And from my experience, I feel like I've experienced probably half of what could possibly be experienced by anyone. And I remember one of the first ones that took us multiple days to figure out was whenever it was still with the Selenium WebDriver with the C#, I believe that was in 2015 in Verizon. And we would use scroll through the page to scroll to a certain element before you click it. And when you scroll on the right side of the app, there the bar would appear, the scroller bar, right? Like when you scroll with the mouse, you would see the bar. You could grab it with the mouse and just pull it manually. And that bar was covering one of the elements that we were trying to click. And it took us multiple days to figure out that. And that was the first one. The other case was when I've joined one of the very prospective, fast-growing startups in Northern America, a lot of tasks were chained together. And the data was created manually, and people would use that data without knowing that that data is used in a different task case. So multiple task cases using same data and without knowing of that. And if the one task would change the data, the other task would fail. If the other task would change the data, the first task would fail. And you would never know which one fails for what reason, because it would be so intertwined. And the fix for it was to actually implement something that Lucas is using in his company now, which is creating data through the API. So every task would be isolated as possible. So would have no dependencies at all. And that did fix a lot of flakiness. And one of the worst cases that took me a while, it was login issue. I think I've mentioned it on this video right here, on that interview preparation video, by the way, that was 2017, I believe, when I worked in a authorization and identity team, and the customers brought up the issue that sometimes login fails, like once in 30 or 50 times it fails. And I try to log in like 5-10 times manually. It works fine. I don't know what's the problem with the customers. Probably browser, probably internet connection. I don't know. And the different customers will come back like every single week would say the same issue. So what I did, I've created a for loop and I run it 100 times to log in, log out, log in, log out. And it failed on 30th time. Second run, it failed on the 50th time. Third time, it failed on the 60th time. I was like, why? And devs found an issue was an issue on their end. Well, so we should always blame devs.
What you said is totally true. Yeah, we cannot have test dependencies. That's the worst thing we can do for your test. So the test need to be as more isolated as possible. So in this case, having, for example, a specific context for each test is also good, because then the test will be isolated from each other, even if it's creating data, manipulating data. So that's one thing. Also, the selectors we already talked about, but use reliable selectors. Don't use selectors, for example, that are dynamically generated for the page, like class like 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, whatever. Yeah, so have like data QIDs, or use the Playwright built-in get by row, get by text, or something like that. The retries also that's very good on CI, because this is another thing. Yeah, sometimes the test passes locally and fails on CI, and then you don't know why. Because CI usually is a bit slower than your local computer. The local computer is more fast and strong than CI, so you have to account for that as well. So that's another tip. When you have your test passing locally, constantly run it on CI and ensure that it also passes on CI. Otherwise, you have a headache. So accounting for that, and then you can implement in your workflow automatic retry. So basically rerun the test 1 or 2 times when it fails, to ensure that it's a real failure and not just a flaky test. Also, sometimes the API responses or third-party services that if a test needs to interact with those, they can be unstable, they can be slow to respond, or you cannot predict the time that they have to respond to your API call or whatever. And then you just can mock the API responses to return the data that you always need for the test. If you don't need to test which data is returning back, because that's another type of test you don't usually do on UI tests.
Yep. That's a good one. Oh wow, so much useful info from everyone. That's cool. I'm pretty sure these people on YouTube are enjoying it, and they're hitting that big fat thumb up button below and leaving comments telling these guys how grateful they are to us for such useful information. Alrighty. API testing. Can you perform API testing with Playwright? How would you send requests and verify responses?
Definitely, Playwright has this functionality, and not only it's possible to do user interface testing, end-to-end testing, but also doing API testing as well. And that's another good thing about Cypress as well as Playwright. So basically, with using the keyword request, await the request dot get, providing the endpoint at the URL and endpoint, and after that, grabbing the response and expecting that what are you getting, and cross-checking that it should be equal or to be equal to whatever response that you do want to see on that particular response. That's the way that we do it in our project, but also as Lucas mentioned before, we are also using API methods, helper methods, to not only reduce the execution time in our project, but also to create isolated test cases as well. That's another best thing, to just use API in our user interface testing as well.
Yeah, we also use a lot of API. We created a separate project for only API testing, and we also decided to go with Playwright instead of another framework, because it's great, as you mentioned, not only for UI tests but also API tests. It's fast, it's reliable, it does everything we need for everything. And yeah, as Abdullah mentioned, so all you need is an API context. You define which method you want to run, get, put, delete, post, whatever. the URL, and then you verify that the response, if you read in JSON format responses, you can verify that the JSON response contains the data. You can verify the status of the response, it's the status that you expect. And you can also expand further and do contract testing. So you're verifying the whole, like if all the data returned from the servers is what you're expecting. So there's many things you can do with API testing on Playwright.
Exactly, it's pretty powerful.
One thing I do want to ask Sergi. I do remember that one time and during our webinar you did mention something about hashtags, and if you could explain it and how we could use it on APIs, that if a hash is matching with the hash number that we are getting, then every data will be the same. I don't remember the exact wording, but I do remember something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that was about image verification. So if you ever need to verify files, what you can do, you can convert that file to hash. So before you, let's say on one end, you convert it to hash, and then you send it and you receive it on the other end, and you convert it to hash and verify it. So you would know it's exactly the same. Or if you need to download it from different places and verify it's the same. So pretty much whenever you convert something to hash, even if one bit would be different, there would be completely different hash. So that you would not be able to verify those things. Because in order to verify images, you would have to build the software or find the software that would compare images or would open up images, take a screenshot, compare a screenshot. That's a lot of work. The easiest way to compare any sort of file is simply by using a hash.
That's a good one.
Is it actually just about the images that we could do that, or is it about all the data that we do have? Anything?
Any kind of files, you can convert them to hash.
That's good.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little trick that you can do. And then next one, parallel and a serial execution. When might you run tests serially instead of in parallel?
Well, we do have some cases in our company. That's a good one. Usually we prefer to run everything in parallel because that's faster. So you speed up your execution, especially when you run regression and you have, for example, thousands of tests. You don't want to run them serially because that will take forever. But there are some specific cases where you need to run tests serially, especially in cases, for example, that a test state can impact other tests. So for example, if I'm running the test against the same instance and in the same page, and one test is enabling a feature flag or something like that, will change the UI or the elements on the page. And then the other test is expecting the old UI to be present. So that test will fail. So you would have to run serially and then build up the test state or enable that flag in the before each, run the tests, and in it after each in the tear down, disable the flag for that. Right now we have a very specific case in our company that we started using a tool called Launch Darkly. So we use that for launching new features. So the developer doesn't need to build a specific feature flag inside our own app, which was not very scalable. So we just go to the feature, create a new Launch Darkly flag, and then in our tests, we have to test the old and the new behavior until that feature is used across the whole for all the users. So during this period, we have to have tests for both scenarios, and then they need to be serial. So one test is enabling the flag, running on that state, and then after it's disabled, the other test executes on the other state.
Nice. That's cool. That's a pretty cool feature. Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Very handy.
Absolutely. All right, next one. Reporting and logs. Which library or methods do you prefer for generating test reports and logs for your Playwright runs?
In my case, it's the built-in reports that Playwright has. We do have list and HTML reports, and we do use that. And sometimes we do have enabled the screenshots as well, creating videos if the test case has failed. So we do have those reports in HTML as well.
Yeah, we do the same. We also we have, besides the screenshots and videos, we also I like to use it a lot, the trace viewer from Playwright reports, which is very handy. So because you can open the trace and see each step execution of your test which failed and know exactly where it failed, and you can check and verify the the API network, what calls were happening at that time, if there were any error in the console or anything. So that's very handy for debugging your tests. So, but we also use just the Playwright built-in reports. You could integrate that with another reporter like Allure or something like that, but we don't need to do that in our company.
Something that makes Playwright much more useful than Cypress is the trace reporting that Cypress does not, provide that.
Awesome. Let's move forward to CI/CD integration. How do you integrate Playwright tests into CI pipelines such as GitHub Actions or Jenkins? Walk me through your setup.
In my case, we do use GitHub Actions. So basically, in our project, creating the the GitHub folder and creating workflow folder, and after that, creating the YAML file, setting the triggers that we do need, and also the triggers will basically mention that why and which triggers should run the test cases when in your CI/CD. And we do mention jobs as well, basically creating a YAML file that what we do need.
Yeah, fair enough. Super simple, copy paste from official documentation they have.
The workflows, I just wanted to add that you can have different workflows for different things. And running the Playwright, for example, in our company, we have several workflows. One of them is only for smoke tests, for example, and then it runs automatically on every PR. We have another workflow which is manually triggered. So if I want to run, like I mentioned before, I want to verify that my tests, which are passing locally, are also passing on CI. I can go to this manually trigger workflow and then input against which instance I want to run, which tests I want to run. For example, I want to run a whole file or only that specific test case number or whatever, how many instances or workers I want to run or how many times I want to repeat. And then I can just trigger that workflow and that will trigger that for me on CI. So there are a lot of things you can do. CI is vast.
Nice. Test environment setup. What environmental variables or secrets might you need to test for your test run? And how do you securely manage them in CI? That's a good one.
Yeah, you need different things to be able to run a test, such as API keys, authentication tokens for users, database credentials in some cases, yeah, or some environment-specific configuration that your test needs to be able to run. And I also use GitHub Actions in my company, and the best way to handle all of that using the secrets context that GitHub Actions do provide you. So basically, in your YAML file, in the step that you need to use those things, you basically will call secrets dot credential something or authentication token or whatever. Yeah, and then you will trigger, will pull that information for your test, for your workflow.
GitHub secrets. That's the way. That's the way to store everything in GitHub. Awesome. Test automation pyramid. Explain the test automation pyramid, unit, integration, and UI, and where does the Playwright fit, and how do you ensure an appropriate balance? That's a good one. Because there's a generally accepted pyramid, and also there are quite a few configurations that every company and a team in the world does on their own. Like you guys are using different way of different design of the page object model, I would say, that fits better your needs, and it definitely makes sense why. So I'm pretty sure there will be different sort of designs or configurations of the testing pyramid. But how does it work on your end, Lucas, in your company?
Yeah, in our company, we try to stick as much as we can to the general concept of the test pyramid. So basically, we try to have on the base of the pyramid, so we think of the pyramid like this. So on the base, we have as much as possible more small, very fast to execute and reliable tests. So unit, integration tests. And then we start to moving up, and then we can have API tests, also called integration tests. So we can call, for example, in some cases, acceptance tests that already use more parts of the app. So basically, as you go up in the pyramid, the tests get bigger and more expensive to write and to maintain. So that's the idea of the concept, yeah. And then at the end are the most expensive and most difficult to maintain tests, which are the end-to-end tests, yeah. So in our case, we try to have as least as possible of end-to-end tests. So we only have them when, or either we need to have them. So for example, I have a feature which is touching both the front end and the back end, and I cannot test it with two different tests because I want to test the whole thing. So I need to have an end-to-end. So in this case, we add them. But basically, if we have an epic for the whole feature, we have, let's say, 80, 90% of lower level tests and 1, 2, maybe 3 end-to-end tests for that feature for most of the happy paths. And then edge cases and other things we use lower level tests for.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Fair enough. How do you guys mark? I mean, I think you've answered that by specifying tags and using grab in a CLI, right? All
exactly.
right.
Yeah, we have all the smoke tests have the smoke tag, and then when we define the GitHub Actions workflow, we just grab all those tests that have that tag to run.
Makes sense. And you guys put the tag in a test name, right?
The test name, yeah. There are different ways to define tags in Playwright test, but this way is pretty handy. You just add a net with the tag you want, and then you grab that for running.
Yeah. Gotcha. And one more question. Do you integrate any performance or load testing tools in your process? And do you keep it separate from Playwright UI automation?
And in our case, yes, it's separate, but in my case, I have learned Gmeter and also K6, which is another performance tool that we could install in VS Code and we use it. But I don't have a real-time experience on both of them. Just to enhance my own skills, I have used them in the past, yes.
Yeah, in our company, we started having performance tests last year. So we created a new project, and we also use Grafana K6 for that, which is nowadays, I think, the most famous performance testing tool in the market, which is really great, especially now that it was acquired by Grafana, because you have a lot of observability functions that you can use Grafana for that combine your performance tests with that. And but we're still in the beginning of this project. It's something new, but we do have a separate project for that. It's not integrated with Playwright.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense to keep it separate. Awesome. All right. I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think a lot of people are going to put their comments right now and say how much they have enjoyed this video. And I'm going to quickly remind you guys that if you or any of your friends are interested in becoming a QA engineer from scratch and they have no experience, I'm going to leave a link where they can simply sign up for a 1-week introduction course and learn basics of manual testing and see if they actually going to enjoy it. And for the rest of you guys, if you want to learn test automation just like these awesome folks do know it now, feel free to schedule a call with me or simply sign up for a test automation course, whatever you prefer. Now I want to thank Mr. Abdullah and Mr. Lucas Smith from Afghanistan and Brazil for joining and sharing their experience and the knowledge and the wisdom mainly with the rest of the world.
Yeah,
it was a pleasure, Sergey. Thank you.
It was amazing. Yeah, we hope we can help many people along the way. And also, if you want, Sergey, also feel free to include our like LinkedIn profile or something, the description of the video, so people can reach out to us, because sometimes I know folks may think, oh, this can be fake, this is scam or whatever. So we can show that we are real people, that we are in the world, working for real in the market. So that helps also the new people to have more confidence.
Absolutely. I'll probably add your Instagrams because you guys are looking nice.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a great idea.